Good evening, good evening, good evening. Tonight I'm going to be reading from the book entitled IFISM by Osamoro Ibi, Volume 2. And I'm going to be reading on the chapter called The Art of Divination according to Orunmila. Divination has been defined as the art of telling the fortune, the future, and the unknown by non-rational or metaphysical methods, intuitive prevision, or augury. There are several methods of divination which can be done by astrological means and by prediction through stargazing. It can also be done through palm or face reading. Other methods include the use of sand or water and crystal balls. In sorcery, a witch doctor is able to tell the future of someone by recording the person's vibrations. Some diviners use appropriate herbs to rub the faces of ordinary persons to make it possible for them to foretell the future of others. Other doctors use medicinal preparations for prospective seers to swallow, thus making it possible for such persons through extra perceptual vision to tell the future of other people. Orunmila, however, has proclaimed that any Ifa priest who uses extra perceptual vision to interpret his revelations or to supplement his theosophy, his theosophical knowledge of IFISM with extracurricular visionary powers will court the risk of running into difficulties such as blindness, permanent deformities, or premature death. Interesting. That is because extra visionary powers belong to the elders of the night, and to use unauthorized involves spying on the night without being a witch. A witch doctor who is also an Ifa priest might use such powers and get away with it, provided he does not transgress the rules of the night. Any non-initiate into the cult of witchcraft, no matter how diabolically strong he may be, as an Ifa priest or as a diviner, runs the risk of blindness. If he uses extra perceptual power of divination without being a witch, in fact, he runs the risk of losing his life if he is not strong enough to protect himself against the inevitable onslaught of the night as soon as his spying discovered. As soon as his spying is discovered. We go on to read possession. Orunmila is the only divinity that can be invoked to advise without being possessed. That is mainly because he was first and foremost the wisdom divinity of the divinosphere from the beginning of existence. The second reason is that he was the last of the divinities to return on his own free will to heaven. He did not die like the others did, but merely climbed the tree of life to lapse into eternity. For the other divinities, they can only truly divine by taking over the ordinary senses of their servants or priests and talking to people through them. When the ordinary divine priest is possessed, he or she can foretell past, present, and future events in the usual way, because the person is no longer in charge of his or her senses. As soon as the priest is depossessed, he or she cannot remember a word of what he or she said under the spell of divine possession. I beg to differ with that. The most common divinities known to West Africa who divine by possession are Ogun, Shango, Oshun, Osonyin, Obalfon, Obaluaye, Ake, Irewe, Ovia, or Osa, Ok, Huaihi, Olokun, Oya, Eziza, or Ajija, and so on. In addition to involuntary possession, the divinity is usually invoked by beating drums or gongs or maracas, or an ensemble of all the three musical instruments. As soon as the instrumental music, sometimes accompanied by vocal music, builds to a crescendo, the allegro comes when the priest gets possessed and gives thanks to the God for creating the divinity that ordained him or her as a priest and for creating the earth on which he or she stands. Divination then begins. On the other hand, Orunmila does not permit the use of any of the above mentioned methods of divination by his followers. Orunmila says that divination symbols for Orunmila says that divination should not be made to look like magic. He only recommends the use of Ifa symbols for divination through the 256 Ifa Odus. The only similarity between Ifism, and astrology is that just as astrologers use the stars appearing at divination to predict the future, an Ifa priest uses the particular Odu appearing at divination to interpret past, present, and future occurrences. Ifa and art of divination. The simplest form of divination known in Ifism is the use of the four-piece kola nut. The kola nut is split open and four of the pieces are used to invoke the following 5 olodus of Orunmila. 1. If all the four pieces appear face up, it means that the most senior olodu, Ejiogbe, is ready to speak. 2. If all the four pieces appear face down, it means that Oyekomeji, the second most senior Olodu of Orunmila, is ready to speak. 3. If 2 of the 4 pieces appear face up and the remaining 2 appear face down, it means Obarameji, the 5th Olodu of Orunmila, is ready to speak. 4. If one of the 4 pieces appears face up and the remaining 3 face down, it means that Okoma Meji, the 6th Olodu of Orunmila, is ready to speak. And 5. If 3 of the 4 pieces appear face up and the remaining one appears face down, it means that Ogunda Meji, the 9th Olodu of Orunmila, is ready to speak. Therefore, it can be said that the kola nut can only invoke 5 out of the 256 odus of Orunmila. That is why Orunmila does not rely on the use of the kola nut for in-depth divination. One slight variation is that when it becomes absolutely necessary to invoke more than the 5 odus, that the 4 pieces kola nuts can be invoked. A second set of 4-piece kola nuts can be used side by side with the other one. Interesting. Even then, it can only invoke 4 more odus, such as Ogbeo Yeku, Ogbeo Bara, Ogbeo Kora, and Ogbe Ogunda. Any other permutation beyond that will not belong to the Ifa literary corpus. Some Ifa priests who are not aware of this injunction by Orunmila are often tempted to use the kola nut for purposes which it was never meant for in the course of divination. The canons of divination in IFISM. We know through Orunmila that seniority is the first order in heaven. A junior person submits to the will of his senior. Whatever a senior person in a gathering says holds sway. This is the first canon in IFISM. The senior person's will is decisive. The most important thing to note, therefore, in IFISM is that when one Odu says move and a senior one counter demands by saying don't move, there is no movement. We can see from figure 3 the order of seniority in IFISM according to the Ifa literary corpus as demonstrated through Okpele. The use of the kola nut for divination. Like it is with all divinities, the kola nut is traditionally used for offering prayers and sacrifice to Orunmila, whether the sacrifice is with a rat, a fish, a hen, a snail, reptiles, amphibians, or quadruped mammals like goat, ram, cow, and so on, that is being made to Orunmila. The kola nut is used as a call sign to beg Orunmila to accept the offering. This is virtually the case with all other divinities because the kola nut was created by God not only as the staple snack in heaven, but mainly for use in offering prayers. After praying to Orunmila with the kola nut in hand and beseeching him to accept the food being offered to him, that is before actually offering the sacrifice, the Ifa priest splits the kola nuts and picks out 4 pieces. Any extra, say, a 5th piece is offered to Eshu. Taking 2 of the kola nuts with the right hand and 2 with the left hand, the priest clinches the 4 pieces together to get together pieces between his 2 palms and asks Orunmila whether he is prepared to accept the sacrifice being made. The appearance of Ejiobe or Yikomeji or Obarameji on the ground usually indicates that the offering is acceptable. Obarameji is universally accepted as signaling acceptance of sacrifice. The only other Odu which can supersede Obarameji in these circumstances is the Odu which appears on the first throw of the kola nuts for a new initiate into IFISM at Igbodu or Ogbodu during a ceremony that is normally regarded as the baptism of IFISM. It is unfortunate that it is strictly forbidden to disclose and what happens at the Igbodu or the secret conclave during an initiation ceremony into the priesthood of IFISM. There are a variety of reasons why the confirmatory Odus may refuse to appear on the first throw. Among these are if the offering is incomplete, if the Ifa making the offering is not satisfied, if Orunmila intends to give any further advice, or if any supplement sacrifice is required to be made to other divinities such as Ogun, Olokun, Shango, the offerings, heads, or his guardian angels, and so on. If the offerer is very worried, in which case Okora normally appears at the throw of the kola nuts once or twice in succession. The offering is advised to leave the The offerer is advised to leave